Breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein case. MSNBC has just confirmed that the Justice Department is considering releasing the audio and/or the transcript of Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche's interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. That's according to an official familiar with the matter. Joining us now, MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles, and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Ken, tell us more about your reporting.
Good afternoon, Chris. Well, as everyone recalls, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell over 9 hours, over 2 days last month, and it was unclear exactly what he asked her and what came of that interview. But now we understand that the Justice Department has crafted a transcript. First of all, they recorded that interview. They're making a transcript of that interview, and they are now considering releasing it to the public with redactions of names and other sensitive information. And this, of course, is coming as the House Oversight Committee is subpoenaing information from the Justice Department about the Epstein case. And it appears there's a debate within the administration about how far they need to go here in releasing information. On the one hand, the controversy arguably over this, the heat on Attorney General Pam Bondi may be dying down a bit. On the other hand, the action in the House and in other places and on social media shows that there's still a lot of interest in this story and in what Ghislaine Maxwell had to say. And of course, she was moved from a low security prison to a minimum security prison without explanation. And the Bureau of Prisons had to waive a rule to do that. And so a lot of focus on what she had to say to the Justice Department. And now we're learning they are considering releasing it all to the public, Chris.
So, Lisa, would this be an unusual step?
Everything about this is unusual, dating back to the very conduct of an interview with somebody who's serving a 20-year prison sentence and wasn't talked to by prosecutors in advance, largely because they felt that she couldn't be believed. You'll remember Ghislaine Maxwell was also charged with perjury. She wasn't ultimately tried for perjury, given her convictions on other counts, but she was charged with perjury. But let's go back to the fact that the recording was made and a transcript may be released. That is also extremely unusual. I asked one victim's lawyer today what his reaction to that is, and he said, assuming that the victims' identities are protected, they would welcome the release of that transcript. And I said, well, wait a second. Don't you have any concerns about the way the interview was conducted, given that it was conducted by the Deputy Attorney General? And the response was, yes, any competent interview of Ghislaine Maxwell would be done by someone who has full familiarity with the case and the investigation, which it appears didn't happen here. But that's all the more important for us to see it. So if there is a transcript, if there is a tape, let us see it so that we can see how partial and selective the questions were to Ghislaine Maxwell to satisfy perhaps the desires of this White House.
So, Ryan, to say the least, it's been a busy day for this case. The House Oversight Chair, James Comer, just filed a bevy of subpoenas tied to the Epstein investigation. They target, among others, former President Clinton, former Secretary of State Clinton, as well as former attorneys general who served under 4 past presidents, including Donald Trump. Tell us more about this list of subpoenas.
Well, I think it tells us 2 things, Chris. The first being that there is still an appetite among House Republicans in particular to get as much information out about the Epstein controversy. This despite President Trump's attempts to try and downplay the controversy and the need for more information to get out there. House Republicans are not accepting that. They are pushing for more information. The second thing that this tells us is that this has the potential, and I say put an emphasis on potential, to be perhaps the most exhaustive collection of information related to the Epstein case that would be outside of the prosecutorial procedures that went into the Epstein investigation. What the Oversight Committee is asking for, first of all, is they're subpoenaing the Department of Justice for any and all records connected to the Epstein case. They're basically asking for the Epstein files. And then they're going to bring into this exhaustive list of former officials across 4 different administrations who may have at any point in time touched on this investigation and asked them very specific questions about what they knew and when they knew it. Now, whether or not they're going to be able to get every single one of these people into a room and ask them questions, that remains to be seen. Whether or not the Department of Justice is going to be completely compliant with this subpoena, that also remains to be seen. It's important to keep in mind, Chris, that while congressional subpoenas certainly carry with them a tremendous amount of legal weight, We don't have to go very far back into history to the January 6th Select Committee and saw how many Republican members of Congress essentially just ignored the subpoenas of that committee without any sort of repercussion, to know that there is an effort and an ability to challenge these subpoenas either through court or just by forcing the administration to go through the steps to force you to come in and testify. So there's a lot here that has to happen. But as I said before, it has the potential to really unlock many of the questions that people have about this case.
Two of Epstein's victims, I should say, have written scathing letters to the court condemning the Justice Department's handling of the Epstein files as political warfare. This is what one victim wrote, quote, "I am not sure the highest priority here is the victims, justice for the victims, or combating child exploitation. Rather, I feel like the DOJ's and FBI's priority is protecting the third party, the wealthy men, by focusing on scrubbing their names off the files." There is a confluence here, obviously, Lisa, of the legal and the political. The judge is supposed to rule on the law. But can he be influenced by the political firestorm or the victims and the kinds of things that they're saying in these letters?
I think he certainly will be influenced by the victims, if in no small part because they have statutory rights of their own, both rights to privacy, but they also have a right to be informed of these proceedings and to have a say in them. We learned, Chris, last night, very late last night, from the Department of Justice, that while they've notified people whose names show up in the grand jury transcripts, they have not notified all known victims of Epstein. They say they're still in the process of doing that. Well, my question to them is, what are you waiting for? The deadline for victim submissions are today. That sort of underscores the fact that they understand that the victims' own voices are a political problem for them, in addition to something that has the right to be a part of this discourse. I don't know that politics should ever enter into the consideration of a judge deciding whether or not to release grand jury materials. But some of the other factors that are permissible might be described by somebody else as political. Like, one person's victim's rights is another person's playing politics. And so I'm hopeful that the judge will take the victims' voices into consideration.
In a significant development in the Jeffrey Epstein case, the Justice Department is weighing the release of audio or a transcript from a 9-hour, 2-day interview conducted last month by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate, according to a source familiar with the matter. The interview, which was recorded, has sparked intense debate within the administration about transparency in the high-profile case, as the House Oversight Committee ramps up its investigation with a series of subpoenas targeting prominent figures. The move comes amid ongoing public and political pressure to uncover details about Epstein's network and the handling of his case, which continues to captivate national attention. The Justice Department's consideration of releasing the Maxwell interview transcript, potentially with redactions to protect sensitive information, follows heightened scrutiny of the Epstein case. Maxwell, who is serving a 20-year sentence for her role in Epstein's crimes, was unexpectedly interviewed by Blanche, a decision that has raised eyebrows due to her prior perjury charges and the unusual involvement of such a high-ranking official. Legal experts note that the recording and potential release of the transcript are highly irregular, given that Maxwell was not previously interviewed by prosecutors, who doubted her credibility. A victim's lawyer expressed cautious support for the release, provided victims' identities are protected, but raised concerns about the interview's impartiality, suggesting it may have been tailored to serve political interests. The House Oversight Committee, led by Chair James Comer, has intensified its probe by issuing subpoenas targeting former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and former attorneys general from 4 presidential administrations, including that of Donald Trump. These subpoenas seek comprehensive records related to the Epstein case, signaling a Republican-led push to uncover new details despite efforts by some, including Trump, to downplay the need for further disclosures. The committee's actions suggest an intent to compile the most exhaustive collection of Epstein-related information outside of prosecutorial efforts, though compliance with these subpoenas remains uncertain, as historical precedent shows resistance to congressional demands is possible. Victims of Epstein have voiced frustration with the Justice Department's handling of the case, accusing it of prioritizing the protection of powerful individuals over justice for survivors. In letters to the court, 2 victims condemned the department's approach as political warfare, alleging a focus on shielding influential figures named in the Epstein files. These sentiments underscore the tension between legal proceedings and political pressures, with victims asserting their statutory rights to be informed and heard in the process. The Justice Department has acknowledged notifying some individuals named in grand jury transcripts but has yet to contact all known victims, a delay that has drawn criticism as deadlines for victim submissions loom. Adding to the controversy, a recent New York Times report provided an inside look at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, revealing disturbing details about his lifestyle.